People ain't loyal no more. It's time to talk. Grant, thank you for accepting my invitation. Thank
Pleasure.
you for coming to my world of loyalty, core values, and welcome to Beyond Loyalty.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's start from beginning. Tell me a little bit about yourself, about your... Where did you grow up? I know that you are Irish, yeah? You're from...
Northern Irish.
Northern Irish, okay.
Yeah. There's people in my country, I was explaining this to a couple of kids the other day. In Northern Ireland, you get people who sort of identify as Irish and as Northern Irish, and that's your choice, ultimately. It's your heritage, it's your culture. And this isn't I have Irish friends, I have Northern Irish friends, I have Republican friends, I have Unionist friends. I grew up in a very integrated world. It's just how we all identify. I'm Northern Irish.
Did you live in Ireland?
I lived in Northern Ireland. So I lived in
Northern
Belfast,
Ireland.
just outside of Belfast, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was your upbringing?
Very good, typical upbringing. Father, mother, siblings, comfortable middle class upbringing. I went to a grammar school, did the 11 plus, went to a grammar school. Education wasn't really something that was for me, shall we say. I wasn't overly interested, I suppose. So trundled through, did GCSEs, started my A-levels, but halfway through my A-levels, I decided to go get a job. I wasn't fitting in school. It wasn't sitting well with me. And even at that point, I sort of thought, well, I'll go get a full-time job, because we in Northern Ireland we get quite long summers. We get about 9-10 weeks. I'll go get a full-time job and go back to school after the summer. And within about a week, I knew I wasn't going back to school. I just knew it wasn't happening. Various reasons. I'd also, like, for example, I'd been a DJ by this point for quite a few years, so I had cash, I had income, I had a lifestyle, and I found education a bit of a distraction, I suppose. So I went and got a job and worked in a steel fabricating company's offices for a year as sort of a purchaser, so buying consumables and steel and what have you. And then after a year, they did this every year. They would hire in a 17, 18-year-old, let them work for a year, and then instead of giving them a pay rise, let them go and hire in another one. So I was unemployed for a couple of months, which wasn't a big issue or challenge for me, because I say I had DJing, and I always hustled. I always had bits and pieces.
Side money.
Yeah, side money. Well, that's it. It was side money. And it's sort of, at the time, I was very aware I wasn't paying my stamp. I wasn't paying any national insurance, which, wasn't a big deal. I didn't sign on or anything, but I was just living off the record or off the books. And it occurred to me that I had to have some sort of job to sort of justify my life. But I was at that funny point. This is the late 90s, and I was in that funny place where I had quite a good education, not a huge amount of experience, but I was too well educated for a lot of jobs and not well enough experienced for the remainder. And I was too old to get an apprenticeship. So it was quite hard to hire, and I was applying for everything, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And I would go into the job bureau, the job office every day, and just apply for everything. I got friendly with the girls behind the desk. I walked in one morning, and the girl said to me, 2 jobs have come in today. A bin man, or junior bin man, and a junior in an architect's office. And I said, oh, great, I'll take them both. I didn't care. I was just looking for a job. And she said, oh, well, I've actually just been on the phone to the PA at the architect's office. Would you like to make a call for me, or call for you? I went, yeah, fine. So she calls through and then puts me on the phone to the PA. And the PA says, well, I'm sitting here beside the director. Do you want to have a chat with him? So I'm chatting to the director. He says, where are you? And I says, I'm in the job bureau in Bangor. How soon can you get in for an interview? I said, give me 20 minutes to buy a shirt and I'll be there. So I ran around the Debenhams, bought myself a shirt and went straight there, yeah. And he liked it and did a good interview.
So at this point, did you know anything about architecture?
Not a thing.
But was drawing your thing?
No.
No,
not at all.
That's crazy.
I often, people tell their stories in retrospect, and they say they build a story around how I always wanted to be an architect, and I used to build Legos, and I used to like drawing. I always think that's a lot of story. I don't honestly believe. I don't think many people grow up thinking they want to be an architect. I was just looking for a job, and went in on the Thursday, and sat at it wasn't even an interview, it was just when I had a chat. And he says, when can you start? I said, I'll come in tomorrow. And he says, well, wait till the Monday. And so started there on the Monday. Proper office gopher, making coffees.
Was that still in Northern Ireland?
Still in Northern Ireland, yeah. Folding drawings, making coffees, running around doing stuff, and got little bits of jobs given to me, amending little drawings. And back then it was still on a drawing board, and
Testing phase.
yeah. And because of just my approach to stuff, I was always first in, last out. And the boss liked that. So the boss would often come out of his office and want something photocopied, and I was the only person there, and he'd get me to photocopy it. And then I started getting a job where I was sort of running around, delivering stuff to site and what have you. And I would be talking to builders and contractors and clients, and they would say to me, Grant, can you go and get this done? And I'd go back to the office and say, oh, so-and-so needs that done. And the boss would say, can you do it? And I said, yeah, fine. Can you show me how to do it? And that's sort of how I learnt, just by being
proactive and
yeah.
willing to learn.
Yeah. So over the next few years, worked my way up within in the company. I was getting my own little jobs, own big jobs. I was sort of helping deliver multiple 100-house schemes. This is the late 90s in Northern Ireland. You couldn't build houses quick enough. Somebody said you should go get an education. And I went, no, I'm not an education sort of person. But just and funny, this is a story that I tell 16-year-olds. I work in schools, not as much in a post-COVID world, but pre-COVID, I'd go into schools for kids that are about to sit their GCSEs through RIBA and through different charities. And this is a story that I tell kids, sort of, don't stress too much about your grades. Do your best, but if you don't get the grades you want, don't worry, because you don't know what's over the hill. You don't know what's around the corner. And my story sort of really proves this. So I went and got an education at about 20. I started doing an HND in building studies. Told a porky pie to get on it as well. It was one of those, I went and sat, again, you had to go and sit like an interview, and I said, oh yeah, I've already done my ONC and whatever. And they went, yeah, fine, come on and do it. And it was it was a 16-module course. You were in classes all day Saturday and one night a week. And it was aimed at builders and foremen who wanted to get off the tools, and there was a few of people like me, office workers, at it as well, and it just clicked. I suppose I realised that I always thought that I wasn't academically minded. I suppose I believed the story because in school I didn't do that well, but actually when I'm in control of it and I'm interested in it, I do very well. So 16 modules over 3 years. And I got, I think it was something like 14 distinctions and 2 merits across the 16 modules. And at the end of it, they awarded me this big cup, big college-wide cup for outstanding excellence, yada, 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 and all that rubbish. And then somebody said, you should go to university. And I went, no, I don't think university's for me. All my friends had gone, but I'm 23 at this point. I'm not really, I have a good job. But I applied, and all the different universities said, yeah, we'll take you. Yeah, we'll take you. Yeah. And I ended up picking one of the best schools of architecture in the world, not because I knew it was the best school of architecture. This is Manchester. Not because I knew it was the best school of architecture, but because by this point I'd been DJing for 8, 9, maybe 10 years. And I figured that if I didn't like university, I would live it up in the clubs in Manchester for a year. And that's how I
Plan B.
Plan B, exactly. And I came over to study architecture, major imposter syndrome, major fear. Worked really hard because I kept expecting somebody to turn around someday and say, you're not supposed to be here. And that sort of translated through to me doing very well. Did very, very well in my first degree. To become an architect, they said it takes 7 years. In reality, it takes about 9 years because you need to work really hard and keep that momentum up. To give you sort of a statistic of the 200 odd students that started in 2003, there was only 2 of us that sat that exam 7 years and 1 month later. And that was me and my friend. We sort of worked with each other and pushed each other quite hard. So did well in my first degree. Went to work for a company called Building Design Partnership, BDP.
At that point, did you live in Manchester already?
I was living in Manchester. Mm-hmm. I'd met my now wife the first week I came here. And we moved in together. And yeah, it was sort of, this again goes back to the, you don't know what's for you. Don't worry too much. Don't stress too much. Your life changes constantly. You don't know where you're going to be in 3 years. Don't worry about it.
It will shape itself.
Precisely. So went and worked for BDP. Fantastic experience. Sort of delivering like one of the bigger jobs I worked on there was sort of designing 10 square miles at Kuala Lumpur, which was like 40-story skyscrapers and 8-story deep car parks, underground car parks, and boulevards, and rethinking the whole city. So after a year's work, I went back to do my second degree straight away. But I also, it's a full-time degree, but I didn't tell the university that I was also working 3 days a week in the architect's practice. So again, hard work, a lot of intense work. You had to really work hard. I got to the end of the second degree, did very well. Put myself straight in for the exam. So one more year's work and then straight in for the exam. And I qualified. And this would have been in 2010. I was 30 years old, give or take 30 in a few months. I qualified and was made redundant in the same week. And this is the point, we all remember the recession of the sort of 06, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, what have you. Nobody was hiring. So it was a very do or die moment. I set up my own practice. And it was very much a make this work or get out of the industry because there was just no jobs. So back bedroom of the house, me and a laptop, a bag and a dream. And I hustled. Oh, I hustled so hard. I took on anything and everything going. I almost sustained myself from doing the little bits of work that other people didn't know how to do or didn't want to do. So did a lot of things like transfer plans, lease plans, did a lot of court appointed expert witness, did boundary disputes, did the typical dormer, loft conversions, extensions, and that sort of got me going. Realized I knew nothing about building a business. Absolutely not. For the first 6 months, I couldn't understand how I had, my pedigree was phenomenal. Best school of architecture, qualified, in 7 years and a month. I should have people banging down my door to get work. And it was sort of realized that I needed to learn how to build a business. So sort of back to education and spent a couple of years learning how to build and grow a business, how to acquire clients, how to market, how to message, and how to portray a story, which made people want to work with you. And I still say that little bit of education is probably the most valuable bit of education that I've ever had. And then about 3 years in, I got a phone call from a guy, millionaire, wanted to do. The phone call sort of went, "Can you do HMOs?" And I went, "Yeah, fine, no problem." And he says, "Right, come down and see me in my house tomorrow." And he lived in a big mansion down in Prestbury. This guy retired at 27 with 40 million in the bank,
Wow.
Silly sort of money. And I went, "Yeah, no problem, come see you tomorrow." Hung up the phone, and the first thing I did was Google, what is an HMO? And sort of researched it that afternoon. I had been doing them.
But you didn't know?
Didn't know. I just
what
called
they
them
are.
shitty student houses. It was like we'd done a whole load of them across Salford and things. I went down and pitched this idea to him about my research had found an HMO in the middle of Salford that was getting very high rentals, the premium. Because back then nobody was doing premium. We're going back sort of 12 years. So I went down and pitched to him this idea of, this is your first one. Why don't we do a premium HMO? And it was a 9-bed.
Was there no Article 4 at that time?
No, we're way back in. Well, this was a 9-bed, so it took full planning anyway. But this was back in the days before HMOs got really popular. It became a really
Big
aggressive.
thing.
Yeah, they were around. The PIN network was going, and we were doing them, but they were mainly students, and they were mainly sort of stick a bedroom in the living room. You had an HMO type stuff. So we gutted this whole big, was it a 4-story house? Dug out the basement, big kitchen down in the basement. 6 of the bedrooms had sleeping lofts in them with little kitchenettes. The other 3 had like properly zoned kitchen and sitting area. And I used it as a marketing tool. I brought every investor I could get to come and see it during construction. And the client allowed me. And I was running open days through this and went from sort of, plodding along to being the go-to guy for HMOs quite quickly. And back then, so that had been by 2013, 2014, we went from doing okay to getting maybe 3 new projects every week, new HMO projects every week. And that's sort of, it set me as being the HMO architect. And I don't brand myself as the HMO architect, but it's sort of made me the go-to guy for HMOs. And since then, we've probably done maybe 300, 400 HMOs. But it's interesting talking about branding. I've never said I'm the HMO architect. I say I'm the property investor's architect. And then this, we talk about learning a lot, but this came from a lesson. A client came to me. He had a block of flats, and there was a technical issue, and he said, "Could you help me fix this?" I went, "Yeah, sure. But can I ask, why didn't you use me for these flats?" He says, "Oh, well, you only do HMOs." I went, "Oh, that's not it." And that's where I learned very quickly about messaging and making sure people knew that we do
limiting your reach.
Yeah, and I did it unintentionally. So we're very, very clear on this. We are the property investors architect, and we do everything. If you make money from it, we've done it. And the ongoing learning, we've become very good at understanding planning nuances, development strategy, finance, taking advantage of different approaches. We do everything from the big ones, HMO, commercial to resi, apartments. But then even in those two, just take those two and you look at the multiple exits you have, whether it's a market or it's an SA or it's assisted living or it's special care. And that's just in those two. And then you go, but then you also we do quite a lot of commercial work, and we do splitting stuff up, and we do greenfield development, we do buy and flips, and we follow the investment trends that clients take. So yeah, that's a very quick, brief how we got from there to here.
Did you have to hire some people at that point when you were getting 3-4 projects a week?
Yeah. So I think about year 3. But thereabouts, we went from me and my own in the back bedroom of the house. I was using a few remote contractors, sort of piecemeal by the job. And I decided, okay, we're now getting to the point where the management of contractors is getting a bigger part of the job. So I took an office just off Piccadilly Gardens, massive leap to go from sort of that sort of investment in yourself, that sort of really going, right, I'm going to make this work. Took an office in Piccadilly, just off Piccadilly Gardens, hired my first staff member, and pushed. Yeah. And yeah, we are now here.
Brilliant. That's very inspirational for some people who are starting business. Like, you can make anything work if you're willing to put the hours in and work hard as well.
Yep. The big thing I say to everybody, because I do sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Coach, I suppose. Not for money, but just more as helping people up. I do coach a handful of young architects at Hockley to help them sort of. And then they say to me, how did you get to where you are? What did you do? And the big thing I say to them is that you got to keep learning. You can't be stagnant. No, you can't. Every time something new comes up, you need to learn it. Every time there's a new social media platform, you need to understand it. You need to understand your marketing. You need to understand the value of your client acquisition. You need to understand your cash flow. You can't just be throwing this up in the air and hoping magic works.
AI age is here now. Everyone is on every single possible social media as well. That's why we do podcasts, because we can reach millions.
Yep.
That's the new, not just trends, but it helps you to grow your business as well.
Yep.
Because it will come to people. People will see your face, know who you are, and that's how you sell.
The way it was put to me is that ultimately company directors don't realize this until they start getting some success. You do not really run a service. You run a marketing company. And in everything that you do, it's a marketing company. If you're a builder, it doesn't matter if you're the best builder in the world. If you're not getting the word out about you being a good builder,
no one will know.
No one will know. So you are a marketing company, and that is your job as the guy who wins the work, or the girl that wins the work. You need to be the marketing company.
That's a golden nugget.
Yeah.
What was the most exciting project you worked on so far? I know there were a few, but pick one. The one that you feel like, wow, I'm very proud of this project.
That first HMO, that first super high luxury HMO, it was phenomenal. It was.
Was it the one where you invited people for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had everything. It had, say, little kitchenettes, but it also had video calls, but video between the main room. We set this out to be the premium hotels sort of grade. But one of the things that really, I suppose, tickles my vanity is when people come to me with a problem, and they've asked everybody else and nobody can fix it. And I go, well, I can fix that. I do get a massive, and sort of an example, very early days, it was a house in South Manchester that had been built badly. They put an extension on it, and there was 2 gables coming off the back. And in heavy rain, the water would run down off one roof into the trough, and then up under the other side of the roof and pour in. And they'd had a whole load of builders out and a whole load of different people that spoke about it. And the response that everybody was giving was, oh, we need to raise the ridges, we need to take all the roof off, we need to raise the pikes, they won't increase the pitch, there was no other way to fix it. And I came up with a really simple, low-tech response. In essence, we built a walk-in gutter. But when the water came down, it would run off and then it'd be into this trough, this sort of 18-inch wide trough, but there was no way I could get up the other side because it was an actual step up. So it was quite a simple, technical, detailed response, which saved tens of thousands of pounds. And I got a massive kick out of that. And there's been quite a few of them over the years. I often find people come to me when something's gone wrong, whether that's with their planning strategy or with their design or with what have you. And 4 or 5 times a year, we'll get somebody who'll come to me and go, my previous designer has done something wrong, or my previous planning hasn't worked, or my whatever. And that's where you really feel that your knowledge, your knowledge level, all the effort you've put into education and understanding and learning and growing, it really pays off. When you it's rare something comes to me that I can't think of a way to fix it. Sometimes it's not fixable. But a lot of the times I'm sort of like, brush my own shoulders off a little bit,
Give me some extra bonus for saving you a couple grands.
Yeah, and I'm quite. It's funny. I'm quite black and white about this. I'm very open about our fee structure from the beginning, and I'm very, I'll say to them, this is going to take about 8 hours, and our hourly charge out rate is that, so that's how much it's going to be. But when they come back to me and go, oh, can you do it for this? I'll say, well, no, because I have properly resourced the job to allow it to be done correctly. If you want cheap, go and find somebody who's cheap. But I'll see you again in 6 months if it's not right, and that's, and that,
your value.
Yeah.
At Rainbow Northwest, we make real estate effortless. Whether you're looking to sell on the market, off market through our exclusive investor database, or via auction, we've got you covered. Plus, we offer top-notch property and project management, including refurbishment for investors. We can help you to build your own portfolio. Let us help you on your real estate journey. Rainbow Northwest, your trusted real estate business partner. Are there any mistakes that people make when they looking for architects, when they looking to work with architects? What do you think they should focus on when they look for someone like you?
So the
reputation
is important, but the big thing I say is make sure you are working with an architect is the first one. So you can go to right now and go on Google and type in Architects Registration Board. The term architect is protected, so I'm on there. But to be on there, you have to prove that you've done all these degrees, you have all this knowledge, and you continually learn. We do CPD, and we carry the right insurance levels, and we adhere to the right professional standards, and we have the right knowledge, and et cetera, et cetera. Majority of times when people, with architects, when people come to me and say, my architect's made a mistake, or my architect's yada, yada, it generally turns out it's not an architect. Okay. It's a draftsperson or an architectural designer, or I always say use an architect who's qualified or use an architectural technician who's qualified, because we're taught to think of things from first principles. A lot of the self-styled designers, all they're really doing is replicating what they've seen before, and where it often goes bad is when they haven't seen it before. So I generally say the first port of call is make sure, do your due diligence. Make sure the person you're working with is an architect.
Did you have to fix many projects after someone?
It happens a lot. It happens a
People
lot.
comes to you to
And it's not
to help.
Yeah, it's not just. I'll give you an example of one. This year, an inquiry has come. They have had planning for a house, a new build house, and it's like an extension, it's an addition onto a 4 block that they want to turn into a 5-bed HMO. It's got planning, but they've realised that the rooms don't meet the HMO standards.
Not big enough?
Nope, not big enough. And I was like, well, did you not have this conversation quite early on? That you want, like at the end of the day, your brief is, I want a 5-bed HMO. It's not, I want a house, it's, I want a 5-bed HMO. So you
there are
start
certain
from there.
regulations that they have to
you start
stick
from
to.
licensing standards and you work up from there. So they came to me with, we can't change the footprint. We haven't got the timescales to go back to planning. Can you make this work? So we sort of unpicked it all and we found every 50 mil we could find and we're able to make it work. But yeah, even sort of that as an example, I don't know the backstory. Maybe the client wasn't clear with the original designer or what have you, but you don't get planning for something that doesn't work, And then this is something that I'm very keen on in the office. From day one, we are designing everything like we're building it. So from day one, we're spinning plates like the planning, the licensing, the building regs, the fire officer, the layout, the client experience. Before we put pen to paper, we have all these different plates in our head that we're thinking, how do we get this product to tick all these boxes? And where a lot of things go wrong, I'll give you another example. In Bury, we got approached to look at appealing a refusal. It was a commercial unit into a Sweden HMO, 78-bed HMO, I can't remember. It was refused. And they approached us and says, could you manage the appeal? And I went, well, yeah, we can, but send me over what it is. And I looked at the design, I looked at the appeal, and I said, there's no point appealing this. You're not going to get it overturned. I said, how did this design come about? And they had said, oh, well, we told this guy that this is what we wanted. And we said, we want a bedroom there and a bedroom there and a bedroom there and yada, yada, yada. And he drew exactly what they asked for. And I went, well, there's your mistake. He says, you haven't had any professional advice. And with the best will in the world, you guys don't know what you're doing. You're investors. And you have a bit of an understanding, but you don't know it at the level. And there was a whole load of issues like, outlook and natural light and room sizes. And it was a mess. And I said, there's no point appealing this. You just got to write this off as a bad experience. Because ultimately, all an appeal does is look at all the information that has been issued previously and see if the decision was right. In this case, the decision was right. It didn't meet so many planning policies.
I've seen this many times, and it's not just with what you do, architecture, but people are trying to save pennies, and it costs them thousands. Like using wrong solicitors as well, and builders.
Yep.
That's one of the big things. It can cost you a lot.
And this is unfortunately one of the downsides of Facebook or social media generally, is that people go to social media. And I used to get into arguments. I don't even respond now, but I would see people post in some of the big Facebook groups that ask a question, and everybody, there'd be 100 comments, all these people trying to portray knowledge and experience. And I'd look down the comments and go, half of these aren't right. They're actually just technically wrong. And I used to say, and then I get people attacking me like, oh, well, you blah, 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 and I'm fighting about it. I go, I'm not fighting here. I'm not charging. I'm just giving you free, honest advice with the best intentions of trying to help you out. But what I generally say to people, if you had a couple of £100,000 in cash and you went to an investment advisor, take property out of it, and they said, okay, you have £300,000 and we're going to turn that into a cash flow or an income or a return of £400,000, but I'm going to charge you £20,000 to do that. But you're going to be pretty much guaranteed your £80,000. Would you think it was a good deal? Because a lot of the times we see people that are penny pinching at the front end on professional services. They're going for the cheapest solicitor and the cheapest agent and the cheapest architect and the cheapest engineer and the cheapest building control. And then they're wondering why it's taking months and months to months. And even the builder, oh my goodness, I love it when people come to me and they say, oh, well, I got 5 prices in, and one was 300, and one was 220, and one was 210, and one was 200, and one was 140. And I went for the 140, and I go, seriously, you got a load of prices in, and you saw a trend, but you still went down
for the lowest one.
And now you're wondering why it went wrong.
I bet they ask for 50 grand deposit.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, and you know, and we've seen so many stories of this. And it's actually in the sort of the property investor world up to a couple of 100,000. It's a really hard world to find a builder in.
Yeah,
and it's a really hard world to be a builder in. Because it's more complex than an extension, and it's more drawn out, and the cash flow is hard from the builder's perspective, and the cash flow is harder, and they price to win the work, and they probably haven't priced it right, and it's not going well, and they're reliant on sub-trades because ultimately at that scale they're not carrying staff, and it's just really quite complex. So pretty much every builder at some point or other comes up on a problem. And it's how they deal with the problem generally is how we go forward. But I've been doing this now in the Northwest 15 years, and the amount of, I don't want to say bad builders, but you know the only way to say it is bad builders, and I think a lot of them don't honestly go in with the intention of screwing people. I think a lot of them go in with the best intention of trying to do a good job, but they've underpriced it, or they've underscoped it, or they've overestimated, or they haven't looked at it properly, or whatever.
One trend I've seen with builders is when they tap on that good wavelength and they've got a lot of jobs coming, they take too much.
Yeah.
So they took, for example, 5 projects that they can't physically do and finish. They were taking money from this one, cover a little bit on this one, show little progress on this one, but that one is that behind that it can't be finished.
Yep.
Because the money that the investor already paid is more than enough, you know, to show more progress. And this is what I've seen as a trend, that taking, and then it's like a domino. It just,
it is.
You know,
it
falls down.
And all the time. And it's why, so when we were doing, because when we were doing the training as well, we sort of try to make this, we try to help clients stay on top of their numbers, stay on top of their spending with builders. Because as I say, I honestly believe that the majority of builders have the best intention. But yeah, as you say, they start taking a little bit of money out of that job to finish this job. And they start cutting corners on this job to try and get it across the line, and it's running late, and it just all starts to compound on top of each other.
And time is money. I don't get why when they price it per job and they just drag it because, for example, they started another job and they can't spend enough time. Just finish this one, move to another one.
Yep.
You know,
it's because all the meaty money comes out in the first sort of 60-70%. So that's why a lot of builders don't finish jobs. It's because they've had the meaty money out, you know, the big stuff, you know, the stuff that when the client walks around, they're thinking there loads of progress is being made. And you'll know this yourself if when you're delivering a job, it feels like the progress is great. First 8 weeks is like, you know, walls knocked down and skimming done and first fix it. And you think, oh, we're flying. But then the last sort of 30% of the job,
finish.
It's always the finish, and it's always so slow. And the client's
Snags.
screaming, why is this taking so long? But they don't really understand that, you know, to paint a room, to mist coat a room, it takes time. And you got to wait till the plaster's dry. And if it's really moist or damp weather outside, it's taking a bit longer for it to dry. And there's a bit of a supply chain issue. And that guy didn't get on this week, so he can't make it next week because he's got another job booked in. And it grinds down to a halt. And this is sort of a very common issue.
It's the part of the business I never really liked, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And because of these reasons, because I had to go around and tell the builder that actually there is caulk missing on the skirting boards and little details like this, like, can you not see that hole near the switch? You know, I can see it. Can you not see it? You know, what do you want me to do? The client will walk in and we will leave it like this. You know, it's going for rental. It needs to look presentable. You know, you quote it. You charge money, do the job, finish it. Let's move to another one.
I do feel sorry for the builders, because in a lot of cases, this guy's trying to balance 4 or 5 jobs, and he leaves somebody on the job.
Yeah,
and then they mess it up,
Yeah,
and then and they're wanting paid for their day's work, and you're just going, you know, like you walk in and the tiling's terrible, and you're standing talking to the main contractor, the guy who signed the contract, who might not have been on the job all week, and it's rocked up on the Thursday morning to meet you, and you can see it in his eyes. He's looking at stuff and going, "This is shit."
Yeah.
but I can't say it's shit because I want paid.
Because it's my responsibility. I'm the guy who supposed to cover this, but it's actually someone else. Yeah. I had it a couple of times. Gas engineer hired someone else, and he put the radiators on, and instead of being straight, they were like this, and I'm like, mate, I can't leave this. Yeah, I'll fix it. Don't worry about it. And
so then
he will never use him again. No. But it puts bad name on you, unfortunately.
Yep. So. And it's interesting. So we don't think about it anymore, but for quite a while, we kept thinking about setting up our own main contractor, us being the contractor, often design and build. But I chatted about it with a few different builders, and I do know an architect who's done it, but he only does premium one-off houses. And, charges very high rates, and it sort of works for him. But in the property investor market, I was sort of thinking, well, I'm going to be competing for the same work as other people, and we're all going to be fishing in the same pond for sub trades,
and taking that responsibility.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to work. And I think this is where I perhaps I'm a little bit naive in this, but I do like to believe that builders do not go in thinking that they're going to screw it, because they want longevity, they want repeat work. They're not, they're not thinking I'm going to. And I think this with most people. I do honestly believe that the vast majority of people have the best intentions. They do see their business growing and repeat work and whatever.
There are some great builders out there.
Yeah, but
business-minded.
Yep.
Builders,
but they're still using the sub trades. And they've got and they've got their clients screaming this. We need this finished. I have tenants ready to go. I need to refinance. I'm on a bridge. You need to go. And he's going, oh God, okay, I need to find somebody. And goes, well, I know that joiner's a bit shit, but at least it'll push the job forward a bit. So he brings them in, and then you go in, and he's playing the bottom of the doors all too high or something, and you're just walking around going, oh, this is no good. And now the main contractor's got to get all the doors taken off and replaced at his cost, and it's just, I do feel for builders sometimes.
The amount of money I had to pull out from my own pocket to do something after some builders that I used. But from beginning, you don't know unless you use them. You can do some due diligence. You can ask people around. They're okay. They're good. Yeah. I have
a story on this. So years and years ago, excuse me.
No problems.
Years and years ago, I won this job. Client was a bit. We did one job with them. We decided we weren't going to work with them anymore. It was an HMO in Swinton, and we got the prices to do a couple of jobs, we got a price in from a builder to do some work, and we got a couple of prices, and they were all around the same mark. And he said, I know this guy that I want you to get a price from. And he said the name, and I went, really? He says, because I know this guy too, and I wouldn't put him in the list. And he says, oh no, he comes highly recommended. I know who's, so and so recommends him. And I said, so who recommends him? And he said the name. And I know the guy that recommended him. So I rang him and I said, Patrick, you've recommended this builder. He goes, yeah. He says, do you use him? I said, no, I wouldn't use him. He's crap. He says, why the hell are you recommending him?
Would you recommend someone?
But I think sometimes people recommend people because they want to sound authoritative. They want to add a value. I don't think it's a bad intention necessarily. But yeah, and this guy came in and he was very cheap. And he did a very cheap job, and it wasn't right. And it was.
So did he get a job?
He got the job, yeah.
All right.
And against my better judgment, I said to the client, I said, look, at the end of the day, all I do is advise. Yeah. And it was a mess. It was just an absolute mess. And actually, the guy ended up selling the job unfinished. But that's just
one of
those many stories, But it's one of the things I always. So when I'm saying to people about when they're asking for a builder, there's a little phrase that I teach people to use on WhatsApp groups or Facebook group. I say, I'm looking for a builder in this area, make it a reasonably big area, who can handle a job of around this size, so let's say a 6-bed HMO or a 150k refurb or whatever, that you have used before and you would use again. That is a really good way to remove the BNI and 4N and the networking meeting. People recommend people because they've had a breakfast with them once, never used them, don't know them, but they'll think, I know this great guy and he's really nice and he does all this work. But they've never actually used them. They've never smelt the, they've never been that close to him. Or it also does away with I used them once, I wouldn't use them again. but I'll still suggest you use them for some reason. It's but yeah, when you're seeking builders, be really quite prescriptive on what it is you want, and would you use them again is a hugely valuable question.
It will save you lots of money. I think it's partially for the trend that we can see these property gurus, you can see all the videos saying you can be financial free, do these projects, do this, sell the properties, you will make lots of money. It's not as easy as it looks, especially for people who are coming with no property experience whatsoever. Definitely work with professionals, do your due diligence, and ask people, even if it's like your work. The reason why I went to you for the work of that bungalow, if you remember, that you did for me, is first of all, I was attending your networking event, and secondly, you've been recommended, and that's it. That was more than enough for me to say, right, he's got the work, and that's it. We've done it. I had builders who could do the work according to your drawings, and we finished it. So
it's interesting what you said. I was talking with do you know George Samoila? Have you come across George? Yeah, me and him were chatting about six months ago or so. I work with George a fair amount, and we were saying about a name came up. So whatever happened to him? I said, he doesn't do property anymore. And then we started talking about and this guy was a big name, hot stuff, doing all these deal sourcing and projects and yada yada yada. And then we started talking about different names and different people who were big in property 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that aren't in property anymore. And I'm very interested in big data with regards to the business. So every single invoice that we've ever issued in 15 years, I know how we got that job. I know, we record client name, the source, whether it was a referral, whether it was social media, whether it was networking, whether it was me talking on stage, and how much it was worth, and blah, blah, blah. One thing I'm really aware of is that the average developer investor is only worth about 2.5 projects. There's a massive drop-off. And actually, if we see a developer investor doing a 4th project, then we sort of know that
they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. They're doing this seriously. They've broken through the fairy tale phase, the honeymoon phase, and they're now but you can count on one hand how many investor developer clients get that far.
I also seen how many people lost cash flow.
That's the
lost
major
the
problem.
Funds, the capital, and then what then? I'm going to raise 50 grand. You can't just raise 50 grand like this. If someone doesn't know you, like when I see these messages on Facebook groups or somewhere, I need 50 grand, 10% return. Okay, what's your security?
Yep.
Second charge or third charge or fourth charge,
So we'll talk about that. There was the guy I just mentioned, Patrick, 6-7 years ago. I can't remember his wife's name, but Patrick and his wife were the hot stuff. They did deal sourcing. They ran a networking event down in South Manchester, down near the airport. Used to bring 100 people to it. They were doing uber high-end, uber premium work. And they were recycling money, their own money, but they were also raising money on PGs. And the last job and he always treated me well. I don't believe for 1 minute that he intentionally screwed anybody. But the last job that he was doing, big one-off house in Prestbury, at the time, you know an approved inspector. So for anybody who's listening who doesn't understand, there's 2 ways you can get building control approval. You can use the council or you can use an approved inspector. Generally, people use approved inspectors because it's a private service. The service is a little bit better.
You can find them basically like privately.
Just Google them. You'll find
them. You don't have to go through council.
So back then, there was 2 insurance companies that were underwriting the whole industry. One insurance company had 60%, 65%, and the other insurance company had 35%. And the smaller insurance company said that they were withdrawing from the market. And the other insurance company said that they weren't going to offer the product to any new clients. So what it meant was that a lot of the approved inspectors went bust in that year. Pretty much as soon as their insurance ran out, they stopped trading. And one of the big ones to fall was IEDIS, I think they were called, who was his building control company. And the company literally switched off the lights, turned off the phones, locked the door and walked away.
No way.
Didn't hand over any notes, didn't hand over, just oh, we can't trade anymore, walked away. He didn't respond to this quick enough and tried to finish out the job without building control sign-off. Couldn't get building control sign-off, so then he couldn't sell it. So he had financed this company, this job. I think he'd bought it for...
Was it his or his client's?
His.
His.
He had financed it off the back of... He had raised... first charge was with a bank to buy the property. I can't remember what it was. Let's say 700,000. And he had raised 5 investments of 50 grand a piece, 250k from 5 investors on personal guarantees. It all went bad. The bank called in the debt. He couldn't sell the property. He pretty much handed the keys to the bank and left the country. And that was it. And all of those investors...
Unpaid invoices.
Yep. Unpaid invoices, 250 grand to private investors. And these were people who had cashed in their pensions because he was the hot shit. And he was, his caliber was fantastic. On paper, he had done 5 or 6 big jobs because we had worked with him on them. He had sold them all. He was making big money. He was, big profile and yada, yada, yada. And then just walked away.
Why do you think this happened? Is it because he was going too high and couldn't handle it, or change in the market?
Who knows what? At the end of the day, the reason isn't that important. It's the effect of it. And he just handed the keys in and left the country. And because then I had a whole load of issues with debt collectors chasing me for details of them for the 5 investors. But because of my professional duty to a client, I couldn't release any information. So I sort of saw the aftermath of it a bit. But this happens more than you would think. There was another big one. A guy was raising loads of money for a big, I think about 100 apartments in the middle of Manchester. And it just all fell apart. They couldn't serve the payments on their first wave of investors. And we're talking millions that he had raised it all on PGs. And he went and got a second wave of investors that he was trying to serve them, but he wasn't paying the first wave of investors, and it just all collapsed. And he just disappeared.
What's your advice to people who've been approached to lend money to someone? Have you got any?
Try and get a charge on something. Try and have some sort of...
You need to have charge.
Yeah.
I don't think, unless it's someone you knew your whole life, but even that can go wrong.
Yeah. Because I don't believe the vast majority of horror stories, I don't believe that
people had bad intentions.
Yeah. I think
they just didn't make it, basically.
Yep.
Something went wrong.
Yep. And it's usually the investors the one that gets the most hurt. And I meet people quite a lot who, they've invested previously. Or my other favourite one is I meet them quite a lot. They've spent huge amounts of money on training. I met a guy one night and he told me with a certain amount of pride that he had spent £40,000 on property training.
Well done.
Said, fantastic. You must have a decent portfolio. He says, oh no, I haven't bought a property yet. And I was like, you've spent 40 grand. You could have went and used that as a deposit on a buy to let and stuffed it up to the high heavens. And you would probably have learnt every bit as much as you learnt.
That's great.
And still had the asset, But that was actually where Refurb Ed originally came from. We were supposed to be, and we were, the antidote to the bullshit property trainers. We were always very open and frank that, there was no upsell. There was no, because this is, I used to see these, you see them all the time. Come to our free 2-day training course. And then
it's $6,000 today.
Exactly.
However, if you buy it now,
yes,
you can have it for 3.
Yep, exactly. And that's only to get onto the bronze course. And then if you want exclusive access,
if you want platinum one, we're going to Cyprus, guys.
Yeah, no, there used to be a guy who used to do it, where he used to do the weekend resort in Bali. And I was like, are you nuts? But I think people, they are very good at selling hype.
Yeah.
And then there was one, I went to one on a Saturday, because they're not bad ponds for me to fish in. When I was used to be looking for more work and stuff, I went on a Saturday. And they had you in from 8 in the morning till 5, doors locked, you couldn't get out, sort of stuff. And they hyped and they hyped and they hyped. And what they would do is they offered at the beginning, before the coffee break at 10 o'clock, These 5 books, they sell on Amazon for £30 a piece, 150 quid. But we have 20 bundles at the back of the room that you can get today for £75. People were rushing to get to them. And it wasn't the point of buying the books. It was those who didn't buy the books felt like they had FOMO, they'd missed out on something.
Mm-hmm.
So then when they sold, after the second coffee, a £300 Excel spreadsheet, people were rushing to get it. And again, limited amount. And then they sold something else. It was like a one-day training session. And by the end, they'd packaged all these up based on a value that they had said, and they were saying, these all value, it's £5,000, but you can get them today for 19997 or something. And I was just, and you just see people just couldn't. And I remember somebody telling me, don't take your credit card. And I was like, I'm not going to fall for that. But you know what? You can feel it.
You were close.
You can feel it catching
I've been to
you.
a couple of those when I started in a property. I was going to every single possible networking, even down to London. I went a couple of times, and I was there in the room, and I'm thinking, should I go for it? And it was like $6,000 today.
Yep.
And I'm thinking myself, do I really need it?
Yep.
And then I read Simon Zucchi's book, and there were all strategies explained.
Mm-hmm.
It cost me, I don't know, 10, 15 pound on Amazon. And I wasn't expert, but I knew every single one strategy, and I picked one that I wanted to do, which was deal sourcing.
Yep.
And I just started, leaflets, cheap website, and let's go out.
Yep. Oh, it's brilliant. Their sales strategy if you step back and look at their whole day of how the music's blaring and you're all packed in tight and it feels really busy, and it's funny, they bunch all the seats
then they
up
create
really close.
scarcity. If you don't go for it today,
and everybody's standing around in the branded t-shirts, and I used to know a few of the guys because they were clients, and I'd say, are you working here? He says, no, I get free access if I wear a t-shirt. So it looks like there's a big team around them, and every time there's no give up on it. You're just hyped and hyped and hyped, and the music's boom, 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 and the guys up on stage bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. Yeah. And you'll be a millionaire, and you'll be a millionaire, and you'll be. It's like Oprah giving out free cars. Who wants a car? And honestly, you can feel the excitement in the room. And then they do the exact same thing on the Sunday and on the Monday and on the Tuesday, and people are just throwing money at them, thinking, I'm going to be.
Is it because we are in a property space, or I don't think I've ever seen so much bullshit anywhere else, to be honest with you.
Because there's no barrier to entry.
Right.
It's as simple as that. If you've got a bit of cash, and it's also, if you go on social media, people don't share the shit stories.
Yeah, of
the
course.
horror stories. They share the good stories and the successes.
Numbers.
Yeah.
I always love 5K refurb club,
Yeah, I know.
It's only 5K. I'm thinking myself, 5K new kitchen.
Yeah.
Refresh the bathroom, painting, a new floor, 5K. Where the fuck you live?
It's just rubbish. But if you're viewing the whole property world just on that little blue screen, that little Facebook screen, you think it's easy, because people always share the good stories and the positive stories and the wins, because nobody wants to look like an idiot. They don't want to come on and go, oh, I fucked up my last one, but can you lend me £50,000, please?
By the way, I paid $1,500 for council tax as well.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah. It was in Rod Turner. I was listening to Rod Turner talk on the stage a while back, and he says one of the biggest things that he points out a lot is a lot of people talk about their day one profit. Their projected profit. So because they've spent all their money, they go, I bought it for this and I refurbed it for that, and we're now at 100% occupancy, and the rent roll at the end of month one is that, and my ROI is 17% or whatever, and then it's a great deal and all money and blah, 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 blah. But he says, but actually, if you look at projects at year 5 in hindsight, and you start layering up maintenance and tenant acquisition and ongoing costs and utility bills going up and blah, 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 and all this, you realise that magic, and this is what he says, a lot of investors, he thinks, don't get their head around this. They don't understand why they don't have more money. It's because they're still thinking about that day one, what they think it's going to be, instead of the retrospective year 5, looking back and going, it's a lot less.
They count a profit straight away, and they haven't done anything yet, you know.
Yeah.
I've seen these trends with developers as well. Many people want to be developers, but I personally wouldn't go into bigger developments if I wouldn't have any capital cushion. Obviously, those deals land on my table from time to time. You know, deals where people lost cash flow completely, they're behind, the bank is going for their money. I wouldn't personally go into development if you don't have any of your money at all. I mean, if you are great with raising money, that's big part of it, but you know, you have to raise money for absolutely everything, because people again don't talk about fees they have to pay, architectural fees, solicitors fees, stamp duty, council tax, you know, electricity, gas, and all that. It adds up. It's not tens and tens of pounds, it's hundreds and thousands of pounds.
Yes, it is. And I often find a lot of them are also being very optimistic. They've got no fat in the deal at all. They're going, oh, well, if I can get, you know, they've worked out all their deal and they go, I need to deliver this at 100,000. But actually it's 130,000. And they go, well, I can't do that. And you go, well, then it's a crap deal, isn't it? They go, oh, but I've raised finance and I've bought it and it's mine and I've got to do it. So I need to do this for. So they then start trying to save money, and this is where bad decisions start to come through. Oh goodness, I talk about another story. Years ago, I can't even remember the guy's name. He got us to do it was a small HMO in Salford. We were supposed to be down for full project management service, you know, full end to end. And it was early in lockdown. We couldn't get a builder, and he brought this builder to the table. And I did due diligence. First thing I do for due diligence, I go to company's house. I always find that's a good place to start. And the limited company had been trading 3 months. And one of the guys, I remember it like exactly, his other company was a second-hand car sales dealer. And the other guy run a boxing gym. And they had nothing to do with construction at all. And they had come in with a build price. And firstly, they could start within a week. And that's always a big no-no to me. Any builder can start within a week.
For that type of project, definitely.
Yeah. And they wanted 30% up front. And I just said,
Only?
I said, are you? He said, yeah. And he says, and because this job's taking so long, I'm going to have to let you go. I'm going to manage this myself. And I said, oh, that's fine. You know, at the end of the day, we are always making money. Yeah. So at any point a client breaks ways with me, I'm not bothered. I go, you know, I don't get all upset about it. I just go, well, it's fine. We're paid to do it. It's business. Yeah, the job fell apart. I saw the same property on the market 6 months later. It was being sold as a buy-to-let.
Finished? Or?
No, not even close. It looked exactly the same. I think they had dug out the floor and put in a concrete slab, which didn't need to go in my mind. And I was like, but given being generous to the client, he was making decisions from a position of stress. Bad decisions, because we generally do make bad decisions in positions of stress.
Because his numbers didn't work anymore.
Nope. And he was on a bridge and he needed to get out, and I think he had to pay back an investor and all these problems, and he made a bad choice from a position of stress. And that's a common story, people making bad choices. And then this is what we often end up, these conversations go like this. And because I used to do a talk on the network called "Working with Builders Doesn't Need to Be a Bitch," and it would be a 45-minute talk about how you work with a builder. And I would always open with, if you have had an experience where it's went bad with a builder, there is a really good chance that you are the fault. And everybody go, oh, no, it's not my fault. I got a shit builder. And I go, well, how did you get a shit builder? Well, he told me he was good. Yeah, but did you do the right due diligence? Well, so-and-so and blah, 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 and excuses and yada. And I says, well, at the end of the day, it's your money. It's your deal. It's your neck on the line. It was your decision. You know, you can tell me whatever story you want. You can, but at the end of the day, it's your fault. You know, and you got to lean into this. You got to take ownership of this. You know, if it goes wrong, you can't take ownership of the wins if you're not going to take ownership of the losses. And this is why a lot of the training we did and a lot of the talks I do is about helping people to do due diligence and to make good decisions and to stack deals properly and to look at risk and to understand having a decent contingency and what an actual contingency is. Even a simple one, a takeaway. The big difference between a budget and working capital. I'll get people who will come to me and they'll say, I want to do XYZ and my budget is 100,000. And I'll look at it and go, well, okay, XYZ is going to cost 150,000. They says, well, my budget's 100,000. I said, no, that's not your budget. A budget is a realistic estimation of how much it's going to cost. That is your working capital. That is your money.
That's how much you got.
Yes, but you can't just say, I want 10 gold bars and I've got 50p to spend. That's not, they're not in the same conversation. So understanding the difference between what is budget, and you can say what is available funds as part of a design brief, but you can't just say, I want this, but I only have that. They just don't join up.
Thinking about leaving UK for the better lifestyle? Picture yourself in Cyprus. Sunshine, sea views, and slower pace of life will help you to find your dream home on this beautiful island. Let's go to networking.
Yes.
Refurb Ed. When did that idea started to do that?
Yeah, okay, so...
Because it was great from beginning. I remember I used to attend first couple in a row, and there was 100 people in the room.
Yeah, sometimes we get up to 150. I think our biggest one was 170 odd people.
Good contacts.
So Refurb Ed, there was a bit of an interesting thing, because you think about it as being as a networking event. Refurb Ed was never a networking event. It was a training company. It still is a training company. And that was my business partner. And to sort of explain where this came from, what it would have been about around 2000, just in the years before lockdown, I would get approached by a lot of training companies to get involved in their brand. Because they wanted to leverage my network. I'd worked very hard at building a good online footprint. I knew loads of people. My profile was very high. My profile was and is very good. My credibility is strong. So I used to get approached by a lot of training companies. Would you come on board and help us and sort this and do that? But let's be transparent about it. They just wanted my reach. They wanted to get to my network.
Your contacts. And
I always had a real... I always thought training has a stink on it, is the best way to say it. I don't like training companies. The vast majority of them, I think, are just vehicles to part investors with their money. I don't think they add a huge amount of value. And it was my business partner, Sabina, who was a client at the time we'd done a few projects with. She said to me, I want to run a training company. Would you get involved? And I said, no. And she went, well, let me tell you about it. And she talked about it. And I still said no. And she mentioned it again, and I said, well, and it was just, the stars aligned. At that point, there was a handful of people who had got stung by bad training and by bad builders. And it just all sort of hit at the same time. And I sort of said, well, look, if we're going to do it, I want it to be, I don't want it to be just a money-making exercise. If we're going to come at this from an ethical position of where we're going to try and help people, because ultimately, successful investors are good business for me. So I want business. I want,
100%. I want repeated investors to come back to you.
Yep. So I had said, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. We're going to run, and originally it was supposed to be a property MBA. Property MBA is the way to say it. So it was going to bring my 25 years knowledge and experience in planning strategy and design strategy and investment strategy. And then it was also going to bring Sabina's experience in deal sourcing and raising finance. And she's a successful investor herself. And we were going to distill all our information into one big manual, which we wouldn't sell as a manual itself. We would sell it as a 12 months intense course. The idea, and it was one price. There was no come and do the bronze, then the gold, then the silver, then the platinum, and all that. It was none of that upsell. Nope. You were in or you were out.
Yeah.
And that was the original plan. And the appetite for it was huge, but we were competing in a market where there were people doing £200 courses to then upsell you to the 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. And we were just going straight in with, this is the premium product. This was the several £1,000s, but there was nothing hidden. There was nothing held back. You had me and Sabina in your pocket. Small groups, And the sale was quite hard. And that's where the networking thing came from. The networking thing was ultimately just a marketing tool. It was bring people in the room and we became known for running this fantastic networking event, but actually it was only just ever a marketing tool for us. And as time went on, we understood that it was a lot to ask from people. So we evolved it into, well, we're not going to do it as an MBA. We're going to do it as I think they're a 6-month long or a 12-month long mentorship, one-on-one. We're your mentors. We are your coaches. We are your advisors. We are your financial directors. You get direct access to us, and we'll meet every couple of weeks, and we'll help you find deals, and we'll work through deals, and we'll come against it. And that was received really well. We had a lot of people who took part in that. And we ran a few one-off day-long courses, and again, no upsell. So we ran a really good auction course. At the time, there was nobody in the market was offering auction training. And we ran this auction course. And then 3 months later, everybody's offering auction training. It was like everybody was watching us and went, oh, there's a nation. Everybody's watching. But it was a fantastic experience. We added a lot of value, and a lot of people who worked with us went on to do wonderful things. But yeah, the refurb ed was best known as a networking, and this is something that
that's how I knew it.
Yeah, but actually, what it was the networking was the sales tool. It was and
to bring people in the room.
Yeah, and we would get 100 people in every month, and it was huge value to them. People were coming and always saying, it's the best networking event around, and it was well attended, and there was always great opportunities, and we didn't mind.
Good guests as well.
Yeah,
always,
that was a big thing for us.
Value.
We always pulled good guests, not the same old. I used to joke about it. If it was the same people on the stage that had spoke with me at other events, they weren't good enough to speak at the refurb ed event, because at the other events you see the same 20 faces doing that, because I'm one of them doing the rounds, speaking at everybody's event, trying to win clients and stuff. So I used to joke, if I had ever seen them on a similar stage to me, they weren't good enough to speak at a refurb ed event. And we brought in Sabina was very good at sourcing some fantastic speakers. And it was great fun, and when we enjoyed it. And we wound up the networking part of it back end of last year. Not necessarily indefinitely, but we decided it had run its course. It had served its purpose. We weren't, as what we were talking about earlier on, we're seeing a lot of the same faces. We were bringing in the odd new person. We were winning the odd inquiry and converting the odd client out of it. But actually, the purpose that we wanted it, the main reason we did it for,
served the main purpose.
Not anymore. It had fulfilled its purpose.
Because probably 70% of the room were the same people that were there month.
And if we hadn't converted them by now, we probably weren't going to convert them, or they weren't in the market for what we were selling.
Yeah. So that's why refurb ed.
It's taken a break, because a lot of people don't realise the amount of effort that goes behind the scenes to run a networking event.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Like, how did you manage the time? Like organising that event, doing your work, what you do as well, then training all these people, because you had people who signed up for it.
I have a good team around me.
Okay.
And this is something that I've learned over time. Having a good team around you frees you up to do.
To work on the business, not
yes,
in the
to
business.
do the valuable stuff. And we used to joke in the office, and it's changed a little bit since lockdown, but in a pre-lockdown world, we used to joke, if I was drawing in the office, then we were either overly busy or we had a resourcing issue. It got to a point where it wasn't really worth my while drawing. Mm-hmm. Actually sitting down, and I don't mean not designing, but I mean sitting down and doing the drawings. Mm-hmm. My time and knowledge was better spent doing other things. This was a shame, because I enjoy drawing, and I still do it. Every so often a project would come in and I go, yeah, I want that one. That one's going to be mine. I'll pull it to me, and I do keep my, I do still spend. And since lockdown has changed a little bit, I've changed the business a little bit actually. Since lockdown, I've become a bit more, or we've become a little bit more streamlined. But it's interesting, because I fell into this trap, this idea of bums on seats was success. Growth was measured through more staff. But what you find is that you build a machine, you then have to feed the machine. So you then have to start taking on work that you don't want to take on, or you would generally say no to, or you have to.
So sometimes going too big isn't necessarily.
It depends what you want.
Okay.
But we're now in a place where we're every bit as profitable. If anything, we're more profitable because the overheads are a bit less. I'm not having to feed, keep staff busy and stuff. We've had a few staff have left, and we're sort of reduced the numbers a little bit. But it also means that I can cherry pick who I work with.
What's your team now? How many people?
So we have 3 on salary, and we have another probably 2 to 3 contractors that we use.
Subcontractors.
Yeah. What it does is it allows us to scale and shrink based on because it is quite a volatile business. Some months it's not as busy as you'd like it to be, and other months it's manic. And we are sort of toying with this idea of over the next year we might start to maybe build back up again, but in a more sustainable way.
Yeah. Does fluctuation of the markets have impact on your workflow?
Yeah.
Like for anyone.
But we're in a nice place where, firstly, we have that buffer, that cash buffer, that I'm not stressed about it.
Yeah. And you've got your repeated clients as well.
Yeah. But even repeat clients don't last forever because they change strategies. And then sort of one of my more successful clients, he doesn't really develop anymore. He now, because we were sitting chatting about it, and he was saying that when you're trying to build cash flow in the early days, you need to add value. You need to do something to the property. But he says, but I've done that now, and I've got my cash flow. So now when I start looking at a deal and I go, well, I could buy that commercial building and have it financed and spend a year, maybe 18 months to get to a point where we're actually getting any rent roll from it, maybe even longer. Or I can buy those 4 ready done tired flats that are a bit below market value, or even just at market value, but actually they've got tenants in situ, cash flowing from day one. So I can.
So he's not rushing to make that money. That's the good position to be in.
Yeah. So and all he's now looking at is capital appreciation. He's got his cash flow, he's got his income. Yeah. So he's not developing. He'll buy them, he'll tart them up, he'll give them like a paint, maybe refurb them, new kitchen, new bathroom, as and when they come empty. But his model now is very much, I don't need to add the value. I'll still add the value through the light touch stuff, but I don't need. And it's there's a story I talk about. It was a guy who was looking at an HMO in Warrington years ago, and it was a 6-bed, but only had 5 tenants in it, and it was tired. But it was coming with the 5 tenants. And he said to me, I'm going to kick them all out. I'm going to refurb it all. And I said, why? I said, well, I'm just going to get that increased value. He says, but you're not really going to get a hugely increased value. He says, why don't you refurb the kitchen and get that 6th room lettable? It was tired, get that. And then as people drop out, refurb each room. But actually, in day one, you've got rent roll on this. Because if you take those 5 rentals over the next 12 months, whatever that number works out to be, let's say £500, £2,500 a month, 30 grand a year over the 12 months, that's 30 grand you're losing. So add that onto your refurb cost.
And it's going to be vacant for a certain time, until that work is done.
Yeah. So so when you look at it from that perspective and you go, well, actually, and this is a lot of what we do is development advice or business advice, and sort of trying to say to people, because a lot of people just think, I have to rip this back.
Because you've seen all these examples and what works, what doesn't.
Yeah. And it's sort of, and just telling them.
That's where the knowledge comes in, you know.
Don't fall into the trap
and experience.
I've got to go back to brick. I've got to do it all at once. I've got, actually your cash flow is the most important thing, or your availability of cash is the most important thing to keeping you moving forward. And this is why we're saying about a lot of investors don't get to that 3rd project, because they run out of cash. They run out of working capital. They've underestimated build, they've overestimated value, they've underestimated voids, whatever way they've stacked up. Maybe the banks come back and they were hoping for a valuation of 500,000 and they've been given 400,000 and whatever, all these different spinning plates that can affect it. But at the end of the day, they generally run out of working cash.
Tell me a little bit about that business networking that you are still part of, or no, you sold it?
No, I sold it. So going back to the education, first year in, I learnt quite quickly that marketing, as I said before, is probably the most important thing in any business. Doesn't matter how good you are at what you do if nobody knows about it. So I learnt that getting my name out, that front of mind positioning, and getting my name out with as many people as I could, as many relevant people as I could. And this is, we'll throw a different story in first before we get to this. Yeah. I paid for advertising on Yale.com years ago. And I, again, talking about measuring everything, I had a tracking landing page, I had a tracking phone number and a tracking email. So I knew the value of all the inquiries. Do you know how much money I made from Yale.com?
Go on.
0. Not a penny. And I'd paid, I think it was maybe £3,000. And they rang me, Yale.com rang me a year later.
Feedback.
And they said, oh, we can see that your link has been clicked 600 times and your phone number has been called X amount of time and your website. And I said, yeah. And we had a whisper on the phone in the office. So the phone would ring, I'd pick it up and it would whisper Yale.com, and then it would ring, go ring, 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 ring. And then somebody would speak. And we pretty much knew that if it was a Yale.com inquiry, it was actually somebody trying to sell us a photocopier or consumables or printing. Okay. So we didn't even have a single inquiry from Yale.com. So learning that and understanding that the value of your client acquisition, or if you're an investor, your tenant acquisition or your sale or whatever, but understanding how much you have to spend to get your product to a point where it's making you something is hugely important. So I learned a lot about marketing. And it occurred to me very early on that if you looked at my client type, you talk about your client avatar, and if you look at my client type, a lot of my clients were business owners. They had their primary business, and their business were doing quite well, and they had some cash, and they were looking at vehicles to invest in, and some invest in stocks and shares, and some invest in gold. But most business owners have a few properties. Yeah. So it made a lot of sense to me to get a lot of business owners in the room. So I ran a one-off event it was actually in Duckenfield over in East Manchester, where I ran like a little tabletop business expo. We had 50 businesses exhibiting and about 400 people come through the door. And it's sort of, I use this phrase, you don't know what you don't know. And at the time, I didn't realize how good an event it was, and everybody was coming up to me all day and saying, oh, this is brilliant, this is fantastic, nobody does these events like you do. You go to these and there's 10 tabletops and 50 people, you've got 50, but I was running it in a place where I didn't care about making any money on it. It wasn't my income, it was a marketing vehicle. So all I was thinking was, as long as it washes its own face, the leads are of value to me. And it got me shaking hands with 350 odd business owners. And it was a one-off marketing event, and over the next sort of couple of months, people kept saying to me, next time you do that, I want, even at the event, people were coming to me and putting the business card in my shirt pocket. Next time you do this, I want a table, I want a stand. And for the next couple of months, and I said, I'm never doing it again. It's a one-off guerrilla marketing event. And over the next 3 months, people were ringing, people that hadn't even been there. I heard so-and-so talking about your event. That sounded fantastic. And quite big corporates, like some big insurance brands and telecoms brands were approaching me, saying this is right up our street. So for months, a couple of months, I said, I'm not doing it again, not doing it. And then, and this is only about 3 years in, because I said, right, okay, I'll do it once more. And I hired the Hilton Hotel in Manchester. And I remember it was £6,000, which was a huge amount of money to outlay at the time. It was £6,000 to rent this space. And I worked out I could get 120, or it was either 112 or 120 little stands. And so I went, paid it out of my own cash, which was like not even the whole year's marketing budget. This was 5 years marketing budget at this point. It was like such a huge amount of money, and went out and started selling them. And I sold it out pretty quick. And 120 stands and over 1,000 people came to it. And I think that's where the GM Biz Expo, as it was at the time, sort of launched. And went, oh, okay, this sort of, and I made a bit of money at it as well. And I got a few inquiries. So, okay, well, this actually works. It wasn't that much effort. Get to meet a lot of people. My brands went through the roof. Got a few jobs, yada, yada, yada. So I said, okay, I'll do one in Manchester every year. And it wasn't that difficult to do. And then somebody approached me and said, could you do one in Liverpool? I was like, well, because the Chamber had tried to run one and they did it badly. I think it was the Chamber. Somebody had tried to run one. And I went, okay, Liverpool's my stomping ground. We do a lot of work there. I'll do one in Liverpool. And I said, but if I'm going to do one in Liverpool, I'm going to need a little bit of help. And to make that work, I'm probably going to need to do a little bit more than 2. So in like year 3, we launched 4 events. And in year 4, we launched 8 events. And we had it in 8 cities around. And it had its own team and its own sort of, staff. And I actually was able to withdraw from it quite a bit. And I got this manager trained up and he was doing a really good job. And then at about year 5, year 6, he turned around and said he had a job offer in Australia, once in a lifetime job offer in Australia, and he wanted to go do it. And I had no appetite for getting back involved in it. And again, it had run its course. We'd got a lot of work out of it. It was running. It was doing well. It was things. So I was toying with winding it up, and then just had a conversation with somebody, and they went, "Oh, we'll buy that," and then they bought it, and we exited it, and it was a fantastic, and it was a fantastic experience, fantastic event. Learned a lot about marketing because I used to look at the marketing for the Biz Expos as being the dirty marketing. I would do some interesting strategies, shall we say, but I would test them on the Biz Expos because I didn't care that much if it went bad because it was a high volume, low value sale. Mm-hmm. But I would test it on the Biz Expos, and then if it worked well, I'd pull it over into the Grant Erskine Architect's brand. But it was a low volume, high value. But, so we used it as a test bed for learning a whole load of stuff and different strategies. And yeah, and I sold it about 6 months before lockdown. I was really lucky to exit it.
To exit in the right time?
Because that industry fell apart. Mm-hmm. When lockdown hit, that industry just fell apart.
Any advice to people who want to do any networking events or who wants to become well connected and put people together?
Mm-hmm. And just to throw in, that isn't the only networking event I did. I ran a poker night for a while. I used to bring 200 business owners in to play poker in one of the casinos.
So it's doesn't necessarily need to be about,
No.
It can be whiskey, it can be cigar nights, you know.
And you see them. You see golf days. Golf days have been around for ages.
Yeah.
Golf days work. Clay shooting days, sailing days, walking clubs,
and I bet you would meet some big players there.
Say again?
I bet you would meet some big players there.
Yeah. The first thing I say to people is, same thing. You'll have heard this over and over. Start with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. What do you want from it? Mm-hmm. And you say, well, okay, I want to sell. Do you know what? We'll flip this on its head. Every single year, I get loads of people ringing me, loads of different construction magazines ringing me, saying, do you want to advertise in our construction magazine? And I always say no. Because the average person who reads that magazine is not a client. Mm-hmm. They are somebody I can feed work to, but they're not a client for me. It is better for me to advertise in a dentist's magazine. And it goes, well, why would an architect advertise in a dentist's magazine? Because dentists are rich people, and I want to talk to rich people. Mm-hmm. So run an event that brings the type of people that you want to talk to it. So if you, I was listening to, there's a great guy, what do you call him, Rory, he's all over TikTok at the minute, and he's talking about, he's like a marketing strategist, Rory, I can't remember his name, and he talks about how Ferrari doesn't market, I think it was Ferrari or Bentley, doesn't market at car shows. They market at yacht shows and jet shows, private jet shows.
Because that's where their customers are.
Yeah. And if you've been walking around all day looking at £10 million jets, a £300,000 Bentley is a bit of an impulse buy, But it's a really good logic. So market where your clients are, where your money is.
Think who you're targeting first, and then...
Yeah. And then you go, okay, well, how do I attract those people into the room? What interests them? So for me, it was just simply business owners. Mm-hmm. What can I do to make them want to come? Well, I'll give them the opportunity to market their business because that's all they wanted to do. So it was superfluous that I wanted their data and I wanted to get to them. That wasn't what was drawing them in. What was drawing them in was giving them the opportunity to talk about their business. So it's by the same, if you, let's say, wanted to get in touch with landlords to buy old stock, well, you go, okay, well, let's create an avatar. What does the average landlord look like? What is their interest? What do they want to do? What could I do to make them come to something? And then you start to to build that networking event. So you might not even be, if you're in property, you might not even be running a property event. You might be running a, I don't know, financial wealth event, or hell, whiskey and cigar event. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Invite any type of business owners who potentially have some spare cash to invest in real estate.
Precisely. But if you just say, you're a rich person and I want you to come to my event, they're not going to come. It's a massive turnoff. Particularly at our age, where your appetite for networking reduces. You've got kids.
Yeah,
you want to be at home in the evenings.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a life. You've got, and that continues as the older you get. You know, so you find a lot of the networking events you go to. I watch them on social media, and it's all young people because they don't have life. You know, they don't have
responsibilities and kids.
You know, so I generally refuse now to do evening networking. That was one of the other things that sort of put the refurb ed networking to the side. Yeah, just I used to hate going to it. I like sitting down and having dinner with my kids and being around at bedtime, and you know that's you know,
definitely.
You sort of think, who is it I want to talk to, and how do I attract them? And it might be that you run a car driving experience or a golf day, or it's always better if it's something that you're interested in as well. And I have toyed with things like a whiskey tasting event or something. The problem with alcohol-based events is, firstly, they don't attract everybody. Quite a lot of people don't drink alcohol. Secondly, they're quite hard to manage, because if you're drinking alcohol, you can't drive the car there and back. So, and this is the barrier that keeps coming up to me.
We're in Wigan now, you know. We've got rules 5 and drive here.
But, you know, you sort of go, because that's, so I talk about with a few property investors that are also whiskey collectors, say, we should run a whiskey tasting night. You go, well, where would we do it?
It
Do
is.
it in Manchester.
I remember when I went first time to Puffin Rooms in Liverpool for cigar, and there was a tasting of what's that whiskey called? The Smokehead. And there were beautiful whiskies, and I could only sip a little bit because I was driving back from Liverpool to Wigan. You know, I couldn't really enjoy myself fully like I would.
Or it becomes a really expensive night.
Yeah.
So, and I've actually
Uber bag or something like that.
I've even toyed with the idea of renting a luxury Airbnb. You know, like a mini hotel sort of thing, a multi-room business. And we'll, you know, £300-400 a ticket. We'll all pitch in. We'll all go. But then it's quite a big financial ask for you people. You know, so it's but if you understand who the person you want to talk to is, and how you can attract them to coming to an event, then you can sort of start building something around that, even with simple things like what time of day. You know, I often found that the higher value networking events were during the day, because if you were staff, you would have to justify to your boss going to that. But if you were a business owner, you didn't have to answer to anybody; you would just go. You know, so even sort of subtleties of that sort of thing is sort of like, well, you know, how, so you build it with the end in mind. How do I attract 10, 12, 14
people you want in the room?
Yeah.
Get it. Great advice. At Rainbow Northwest, we make real estate effortless. Whether you're looking to sell on the market, off market through our exclusive investor database, or via auction, we've got you covered. Plus, we offer top-notch property and project management, including refurbishment for investors. We can help you to build your own portfolio. Let us help you on your real estate journey. Rainbow Northwest, your trusted real estate business partner. Whiskey.
Yeah.
When did you always like whiskey when it comes to... Yeah.
I've drank whiskey since my mid-teens. You know, it was sort of, you know, it's funny. I was chatting with an old friend, and even when we were sort of, you know, 16, 17, starting to go out, Bushmills is the big drink in Northern Ireland. Because it was funny going back sort of, well, that'd be best part of 30 years ago. Whiskey was on the decline. Distilleries were closing, and it wasn't as fashionable. So there wasn't a huge amount of choice in the bars. So we would go out and, you know, we'd have a load of beers, and then we'd have a couple of whiskies at the end. And if we were feeling a little bit flush, we'd have a couple of Black Bush, you know, which was like the next level up. But I sort of found as I got a bit older, I was drinking the same sort of 6 or 8 whiskies. I wasn't exploring any, the Arbor and Cardew and something from the Midland Distillery, and and I had the same sort of 6, 7 whiskies. I never tried anything else. And then I think it was in it might have been just before lockdown. Like something triggered me. I can't remember what it was. I saw something and I thought, I'm going to start exploring more whiskies, and started buying and trying and reading and getting into the how they're made and the stories behind the distilleries, and yeah, I've got several. I've got about 150 odd bottles.
Wow.
And maybe not actually. The minute I've pared it back a little bit, I'm not, because it actually becomes, if you're always trying to try new bottles, it becomes more and more expensive, because you sort of start at the entry level and you try them all, and and you sort of, you find what you like.
It's quite addictive as well when you see the new bottle. You just want to go for it.
You do. It's
especially when you read that description, notes, taste.
Yeah, and it's, I absolutely love the stories behind it, and it was something like all of Ireland, north and south. It was I remember reading it once, in the 30 odd years from the late 60s to the turn of the millennia, not a single license had been applied for a new distillery. Mm-hmm. And in the 20 odd years after the millennium, something like 50 odd new distilleries have opened up, and it's the same in Scotland. And even, you think about English whiskey. When I was young, England didn't make whiskey, and now there's loads of examples of good English whiskies out there.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, and even
I've been to Lakes Distillery.
Lakes is a great whiskey.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's a great whiskey. And even I brought, where was I? I was in Poland a couple of years ago, and I brought back 3 Polish whiskies. And it's sort of, Poland renowned for making vodka. Not renowned for making whiskey, but it's and some of the big international brands now are from the New World. There's a cracking South African whiskey, a cracking value South African whiskey. If you wanted to go and spend 25 quid, Bain's single grain South African whiskey.
Japanese are
nice,
well.
They're huge.
Got one Kavalan, I think it's called. I don't know where that. Singapore, is it Singapore? Kavalan?
Yeah, it's
I got that from one of the clients.
Yeah,
but it's nice actually. I really like it.
And the Scandinavian countries are getting into doing a lot of whiskies. Is it Stonning? I think is from one of the Scandinavian countries, and then America, like the whole bourbon market. Yeah, it's you go back 20 years. You had Jim Beam, which isn't even or not Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, which isn't even a bourbon. It is a whiskey, and you maybe had Jim Beam. They were your choice. If it was a fancy place, you had Jim. And now you can go and
Old Fashioned is my favorite cocktail. Definitely, it goes well with cigar.
Yeah, my cocktail, which again takes me back to my youth, is a whiskey and white. So a measure of whiskey topped it with white lemonade, which is sort of after I've had a few beers and I want something.
You always swap for whiskey after a couple of beers. Cool. How do you balance your life? I presume you're a family guy. We mentioned that you've got 3 kids. You love to spend more time with them?
Yeah. That's it. It was. I heard a guy talking the other day. I think it was on one of the social media channels, and he was saying he wasn't talking. It was a post he'd done. He was saying he had a wife and a couple of young kids, and that him and his wife had agreed that he was going to double down on the work to create a lifestyle that they aspired to, and she was going to take care of the kids. And it's his choice, it's absolutely fine. But I read it and I went, that sounds horrific to me. And me and my wife talk about this. We make enough money. Are we rich? We're comfortable. Could we make more money? Yeah. But what would we have to forfeit for it? What would we have to trade off for it? So actually, one of the big things in my private world, my personal world, is reducing the amount that I have to spend, is reducing my living costs. So, my mortgage, and most of my clients will think this is nuts. I am paying my mortgage down like crazy. Because and people are going, I have 60-70% equity in the house. I'm like, but you've got all that money you could be investing. I'm going, yeah, but I'd be serving the mortgage. And to serve the mortgage, I'd have to work harder. And to work harder, I'd have to spend less time with my kids. And actually,
You want to do the opposite.
Well, yeah,
You want to spend more time with them.
Yeah, because it's really easy to get on this hamster wheel where you measure your success from how much money you're making, but actually, when you're not going to lie on your deathbed and go, "I'm glad I have loads of money."
For me, especially now, I was 40 in August this year, and it's all about the freedom, about the time that I can spend on things that I like today, Tuesday, midday.
Yep,
We're here. We're chatting,
talking rubbish.
This is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I want to talk about loyalty, core values. That's why I built this office/podcast studio, and this is freedom for me.
Yeah. So this is what I say to people, and again, in reflection, retrospect, when lockdown kicked in, before they mentioned furlough, I crapped myself. Because I'm thinking, how long can I keep the staff paid? Because I didn't want to lay people off. And even when furlough came along, there was no sort of talk of how long it was going to last or go on for. And at that point, I decided, you know what, we're going to die on this hill if needs be, but it's do or bust. We're doubling down. We are upping the work. We're taking on everything. We're hustling like crazy. We are making money. And that's what we did. And in that first year, we did our best turnover year by a long margin. Now, the other side of it is I was doing 60, 70-hour weeks. I was sweating the staff and the team, and we were, doing everything we could. And we got to the end of the year, and we made all this money. And then we sort of realised that all we had was all this money. Didn't have anything else. I can't get at it any quicker. I take my money in the tax-efficient way that pretty much every other business owner takes it. So it's just sitting in the bank, doing nothing. And in hindsight now, what I say to people is, work out what your number is and be realistic. Pay your bills. Pay your whatever. Have a lifestyle that you want. Put some money away for the future, your pension. Work out what this number is. What do you need to clear a year? And then work out what is the most efficient way to get to that number in the least amount of hours. Because you'll do the same amount of work. So over the last couple of years, I've been trying to reduce my hours, or be more efficient with my hours, or because this is something.
Because time became more precious for you than some number on the account.
Yeah, but it's also if you give somebody a job, and you tell them that they've got 8 hours to do it, they will take 8 hours to do it. If you tell them they've got 6 hours, they'll take 6 hours. If you tell them 4 hours, they'll take 4 hours.
Same with the builders when you when you get someone and they will be paid per day. Day rates, you know. 3 coffees a day, 2 lunches, and walking around the side and.
So my average day, I get up and take my kids to school. I come back. I work from home mostly. Come back to the house, have breakfast with my wife. I'll do a few hours work. I'll have lunch with my wife. I'll do a few hours work. My kids will come in from school. I'll spend a little bit of time with them. If needs be, I'll do another hour's work. And that's how I like my day to roll. I spend a lot of time with my family. And that's what I like. That's my motivation. It's not for everybody, but that's what I like. I like, and I'm very aware. My eldest lad's 10. And in about 5 years, he's not going to want to know me. He's going to think I'm a dickhead. And because all boys go through this, and they go away from their fathers, and then they come back again in their 20s, and that's so I'm enjoying every minute of it as I can, and I love going to the football training and the rugby training, and it's every night of the week I'm at some sideline somewhere or on the side of a swimming pool, and at the weekend I'm at various sports and I'm running up and down. I actually feel like I go into work on a Monday to relax from my hectic weekend of running around Africa, but I love it. And I will not look back and regret it. No.
That's the most important.
In fact, when it stops, I'll miss it.
And you live life on your terms as well.
Hugely. And at some point, my youngest is 2.5. At some point in 15 years' time, when they've all grown up and moved on and got their own lives, I'm going to have to reinvent myself. Because at the minute, I am just the dad. But I absolutely love it. And people say about your hobbies, and I have my allotment down the bottom of the garden, and I have my greenhouse, and I love going down and pottering around there, and I like making pickles and jams with the stuff that, and it's a simple life, but it's a good life. It's like, and I'm not, everybody gets, and I suppose it changes at different points in your life as well. When you're younger, you want, flashier things and experiences and stuff. And maybe as you get older, you become more appreciative of the simple things. And yeah, in ideal days, kicking a ball around the park with my kids, or working, or maybe going out and working in the garden with the kids, and and just messing around.
Spending time together.
Yeah, and with my wife, and and I think I'm very interested in male mental health, mainly first from a personal perspective, but also knowing that I have 3 sons. It's very hard to be a man in this day and age. It's very hard to be a woman too. I'm very aware of it too, because my wife, as with all of my female friends, are all sort of professional, career-led women that are trying to balance having a family and having a career and being super mum and being the homemaker and being everything to everybody. And it's the same with the man. You're trying to be the provider, and you're trying to be the modern dad, and you're trying to impress people who don't even matter, and trying to have your own social life. And God, try to get to the gym. I haven't got to the gym in years. That just got put to the side. But and it's just really hard as adults, both men and women, and particularly men, because I speak about that from a personal perspective. It's really blooming hard, and you need to sort of have a little bit of a step back and a little bit of perspective, and actually just realize getting good at being comfortable is important. It's not about winning. It's not about beating everybody. It's not about making loads of money. It's not about, it's actually looking at what has kept humanity going for so long. It's taking happiness in the simple things. And, and I think a lot of men in particular struggle with this, and they sort of, they get on this little hamster wheel. We've all been on it. I've been on it, 20-hour days incessantly for months on end. But then they start sort of, if they don't catch themselves on, they don't look around, they sort of go, what have I missed? My children don't know me. My wife, my marriage, my partnership is in tatters. We're ships in the night, barely meeting each other. I'm not happy within myself. My health's falling apart. I'm drinking too much. I'm just, I'm constantly looking for that little endorphin hit in something. I'm spending money because it makes me feel happy, but then I feel down because I've spent the money and I've got to go make more money. And we all have these challenges within ourselves. And actually, mental health, internal mental health, your own personal mental health, I would suggest to anybody to really focus on that, because that's what builds longevity. That's what stops the burnout. That's what keeps you able to deal with the world and the challenges that life throws at you. Is having that robustness, but actually, you really need to find that within you. It's not out there. It's in here.
You need to have some sort of purpose as well. You need to have some kind of direction where you're going. Yeah. But I also found out from my personal experience, sometimes I thought that I just need to be busy, but it's not always about that. Yep. When I took a step back and I spent some more time with my family, for example, like you mentioned, I found more happiness than if I was out there and sold 2-3 deals. Yeah.
But it's the trick. It's the big lie that we're all sold, that we're all told. We grew up watching Friends on TV. Do you know the TV series Friends? Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course. And Matthew Perry.
Matthew Perry, and
Rest in peace.
We grew up watching that world, thinking that would be our world, where they could all afford to sit, have their nice apartment in the middle of New York and drink coffee all day. One of them was a cafe worker, one of them was an out of work actor. Rachel worked in a department store, and Phoebe was a guitarist, and they're living this wonderful life. And then we grew up and we sort of realized that actually that's not the life, that's not the real world. The real world is barely getting by, barely being able to afford to live, having to feel like you've got to hustle all the time, you've got to make money, you've got to, if you're not doing really well, then you're actually failing. But a lot of it is getting to a point within yourself where success is actually just being happy. Being happy with yourself, being happy with your world, being happy. And yeah, you say having a target. I noticed this years ago. Road workers dig a hole. And it's an old joke. They dig a hole and they're all standing around looking in the hole. And you drive by and go, why the hell are they all looking in the hole? It's because they've dug that hole. There's a sense of satisfaction from looking at the hole that you have dug. I cut my grass and I look out and I see my lines and I go, yeah, I cut that grass.
Yeah, nice.
There's a sense of, and it's those little sense of achievements. I did that. My wife and I have been talking a lot more about something that we didn't know a name for, but it's called a sense of agency. And a sense of agency is ultimately, so when I'm giving gifts to people, I can afford to go and buy somebody something expensive. But actually, if I give you something from my garden or a jam that I've made, I hold that in a lot more value. It's something that I've made. It's something that I have a sense of agency and that I have controlled. So if I'm giving it to you, it means that you mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
Or if I'm cooking for you,
It's more personal.
yeah. And actually, having there was a report done years ago about mental health in corporate America. And they found that the majority of men who had breakdowns were those in middle and upper management. But the 5% in top end of the management didn't have these challenges. And it's not really to do with the work, it's to do with controlling your environment. Your mental health comes hugely from being able to control your world and your sense of control. And if you don't have that, that's where the stress starts to kick in, and that's where the pressure and the lack of control in your environment. So I sort of try to encourage anybody to really reflect on what makes them happy and how do they keep that. And it's hard, but just keep working towards that. Keeping yourself happy.
Sometimes it's just can be. For example, I started to meditate recently, and sometimes I get a lot of answers to my questions when I'm just with myself.
Being quiet.
Yeah. Especially in the morning. Like today, I woke up 4:30 because I wanted to go to gym, but I knew I won't make it because I had to be in sale for 7:00. So I went for jog 5:00, but I had that time with myself between 4:30 and 5, coffee, and sat down, and you get a lot of answers to your questions.
Yeah.
Sometimes just being with yourself,
Hugely.
we all know, every single one's journey is different.
Yep.
I'm a family guy, same like you. It's a big value for me and something that it's important. For some people, some men, they don't even care about their kids.
No.
They don't even know, how they growing up. They've not been there. If that's okay with them,
there's no one size fits all.
that's fine. But to me, I always wanted a family. It wasn't something that happened to me by accident. And same, I really appreciate the time with them. So what I'm trying to do now is free myself from the business, not to be busy fool and work 10, 12 hours a day, and spend more time with them.
Yep. Because if you give yourself the opportunity to work 12 hours a day, you will.
Yeah, of course.
You'll find something to do.
You always find something.
Yeah, there's always something that needs done. And I remember again, something I learned somewhere about drawing a cruciform across on a page, and you have, what is it? Urgent, important, urgent, not important, not urgent, not important. What is it? Urgent and important, urgent, not important, not important, urgent, and not urgent, not important. Now, if you put every task into one of these 4 places, the not urgent, not important stuff you never do. But if you've got all the time in the day to do it, you'll find time to do it. You'll make it important. Just don't do it. And this is sort of, so everything that I try to do, I try very hard to not waste time. And then that sort of takes us back around to sort of the loyalty and the understanding of people. I have no time for dickheads. I have really gotten quite direct on making decisions about people. And I don't always get it right. sometimes I've made a decision about somebody because of how they've behaved, and I went, I don't want to be around you, don't want to know you, and it's not been the right choice. And actually, in hindsight, I went, I should have maybe. But for the 50 people that was the right choice, I'm happy to make that one loss. And you don't always get it right, and there's sometimes that you do rub up with people, whether they're a client or whether they're somebody in your world, and they are just a massive time drain, and there's no value to you in it. And the value doesn't necessarily need to be money. The value can be happiness or
advice
or education or a sense of well-being. So we're not. I'm not putting pound symbols over people's heads, but you do need to sort of watch out for the. Have you ever heard the phrase a mood hoover? I heard this years ago. It was a brilliant idea. People who are always negative and whingy, and they walk into a room and they just suck the mood out of the room. Mood hoovers. And I heard that years ago. I thought that's a really good way to sort of describe a lot of people. I try very hard to stay away from them. I try very hard to stay away from negative people and cheap people. And I don't mean cheap as in being sensible with money. I just mean they want everything cheap. They want, there's a guy at the minute who sort of, he likes to pick my brains every so often, but he's never put any money in the bank. Never paid us a penny.
Okay.
And he's not a pal. He's not a mate. He's just somebody's being aware of us. His phone his call doesn't get answered anymore. I just don't answer it. You don't have to. You don't have to respond to every call. You don't have to answer every WhatsApp message. You can just ignore them. And from the other side of the coin, I try very hard not to portray that to other people either. It's sort of, I try to always pay for good services, pay for good advice, show that I value that from them, or give my time. If it's not a monetary thing, but I give them my time and I give them my attention and I give them whatever emotion that needs to be given, I give it freely. Because
I really hate the habit of some people, just because you got something. For example, you open a new restaurant and your best mate is coming for a meal and they expect it for free. I fucking hate it. I can't stand it. I'm going to be the first who will be coming and leaving the tip because I want you to do well.
Yes.
I absolutely can't stand people who know that, for example, you are starting with something and they expect everything for free.
It's such a weird thing. It is such a weird thing. Your mate's setting up a business and you want to take from them for free. And we years ago, there's a couple. They were sort of like a family. They weren't blood relatives, but they were sort of associated with the family. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to get the business going, and they took a lot of free advice and a lot of free drawings and never paid us. And I suppose in hindsight, it's something generally I don't work for friends. I've now sort of made that sort of a barrier, a decision. Yeah, I just I just find it doesn't work, doesn't turn out well. Mm-hmm. Because they feel that my services, I don't think are expensive, but if you've never paid for professional service before, you will think they're quite expensive. Yeah. So they will think I'm paying him all these thousands of pounds when he could just do this for free. But if I do it for free, I'll think, well, I'm giving you all my knowledge and experience and stuff that I've invested in, and how do you think I put food on the table for my kids and pay my staff and pay my taxes and pay everything else?
You don't accept nice smiles in Tesco's and Lidl,
No,
if you want to go for a bread and...
So I'm adamant, I always pay. If somebody's giving me advice, I always pay. And even if it's not money, but it's a nice bottle of whiskey or something, or it's a thank you, it's a showing of gratitude, But yeah, you've the people who expect the free meal in your restaurant, they're not friends. Mm. And actually, I suppose you begin to realise you probably don't have a lot of friends. I think as men, it's very hard to have friends. You've hundreds of acquaintances.
We had this conversation last 2 podcasts, and I asked the question, like, how many people do you think genuinely want you to do well? And everyone said, handful.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
You're a very rich man if you can say a handful. Honestly, and it's funny, when I first set up my business,
like genuinely want to see you grow. And look, if you become a millionaire, I've got a 1 millionaire, at least 1 millionaire in my phone and in my circle. You know, what does it change in my life? You know, to see you do well, I'll be happy for you.
I try to be happy for everybody that does well. Everybody. Even if I don't really like them.
Of course.
Because, do you know what?
It's kind of mindset you need to
it is.
have, because, you know, if you don't, and you're an envy person and jealous of someone's success, you're just limiting yourself.
Well, you're eating at your own soul.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, your happiness, you can control your own happiness by what you put out and your perspective in the world. And if you walk around going, oh, look at him and oh, look at them, and you're eating at your own soul. So I try very hard to be happy for everybody that's doing well, that's trying, even if they're not doing well, but they're trying, or they're happy, or, you know, because it just makes your world a little bit rosier, you know. But yeah, it amazes me. And, you know, I suppose if you've never tried, if you've never had the bravery to put yourself out there, if you've always played safe, and you see somebody else doing well, and you feel a little bit of jealousy, or you start to ask yourself, why didn't I try? Or what held me back? And you'll tell yourself excuses. You know, I didn't have the opportunities. Life passed me by.
Didn't have money.
Blah, 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 blah. You may get that. But whatever your excuse is, it's a reflection on yourself that you need to pull them down to make yourself feel good. You need to be jealous of them, or you need to find a reason or an excuse. And actually, I found being a business owner is a very lonely place. And, you know, just generally, life is quite lonely. You know, friends are very hard to keep. Life moves on. Acquaintances are easy. I have thousands of acquaintances, pals, mates, but actual friends, middle of the night, bring a shovel and a bucket of lime. No, there's not many. You know, and if you can count, you know, really good friends who ask for nothing and are happy to see you do, and if you're putting up 5 fingers, you're doing really well in life. You know, I don't think I could. You know, and I don't look at that as a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just, it is. You know,
it's a natural progress in life and, you know, process that unfortunately some people leave, and they meant to leave because we mentioned these people, if they were still in your circle, they're just negative, toxic. Yep. You know.
Well, and so me and my wife we talk about this sometimes with people that we knew 10 years ago, people who are at our wedding that we don't speak to anymore. And it's easy to get down on that and you go, oh, well, they obviously weren't good friends. But they were at that point. They were good friends when your lives aligned. So friendship is a bit of a...
As soon as you stand out.
Yeah. And it could just be a simple thing as we had friends once who unfriended us, cut us off because we had kids. And they didn't. And they didn't want to have friends that had kids. Ironically, they had kids about 5 years later. But at that point in life, and we were really good friends with them, but we saw very quickly that once we had our first child, they wanted nothing to do with us. You know,
that's mad.
Well, that's just it is. You know,
That's
and
right.
it doesn't belittle the friendship we had when we were similar. Just the friendship had run its course, and you know, parted ways, 2 streams going opposite directions, and it's nothing to say that at some point in the future the streams might not reconverge. But I think if you never leave your village, if you never try to do anything, if you're the same boy that started a job at 16 and you're still there at 50, and all of your mates in the village are the same, then you will have lifelong friends. But you'll never see over the hill. You'll never go anywhere. You'll never do anything. And that's fine. I'm not saying it in a derogatory way, but you know, you can maintain lifelong friendships by never changing. But if you change at all, you're no longer one of us. So by not being one of us, you start to be ostracized. You know, you start to think, and that's like a sort of, I don't have any friends in Northern Ireland anymore. You know, I have old like acquaintances from childhood, but even no, I don't have any friends in Northern Ireland. But I've been away 20 years. Their lives went that way, my life went that way.
Same for me. I've been away from Slovakia 15 years now. This is my, I would say, first home now. You know, we live here. I've got business here. We've got 2 kids who go to school. Thinking about leaving UK for the better lifestyle? Picture yourself in Cyprus. Sunshine, sea views, and slower pace of life will help you to find your dream home on this beautiful island. Okay, question I ask every single one person, is loyalty important to you?
Integrity, I would say, is important to me. People can say that they did something for loyalty, which wasn't necessarily the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, yeah, loyalty is important, but I would hold in greater value integrity. At the end of the day, somebody who behaves properly at every opportunity, you can trust that person to behave properly. So I like to understand the measure of people. And yeah, loyalty is important, but not at the cost of integrity, if that makes sense. So I would say I try very, very hard for various reasons to be a good person. Try very hard to do the right thing, even when it's not necessarily the correct choice. If it's the right thing, then I will do it. And there's a whole host of reasons why, not even aside my faith and where I've come from and everything else, but I will always try to help people up. I will always try to support people. I'll always try to look out for people. Integrity is key. You can rely on people that are of good moral fibre.
Mm-hmm. Core values and morals.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm going to do something that is in my book.
Yeah.
And you're more than welcome to join me. I've got a couple 1p coins there, so I will just quickly explain for those that have not seen it previously. 1 penny club is club of cheap fuckers, and what I mean by that is not necessarily how much money they've got in their account. It's people without morals, without any core values that would fuck you over, stab you in the back, for example, in corporate world, because they want to go to your position. They would sell you for £5. We've got a couple there. I'm sure it's going to be full at some point. And today, the guy, unfortunately, it's again builder, because that's the nature of our property business, that we need to do these refurbishments in order to add the value to the property. So one of the builders who I used a couple of years ago, called Steve, and I found out on one particular project, couple project went well. It's always the case. I don't know why it's third, fourth, fifth project that go wrong way.
He's not trying to win you anymore.
So this was a thing, second or third, and I found out that he charged me or my client money for new UPVC door, front door, and it was a second-hand door. And I only found out, obviously, when I came there. I was looking at the mechanism and could see it's a bit rusty, and I'm questioning him. And then I found out a couple other things, like they put tiles in the bathroom on top of the other tiles, which would be maybe okay if the first tiles wouldn't be falling off. Then they put a lot of rubbish underneath the bath and just put the bath panel in. Just a bad practice with no intention to get a long-term relationship. So you earned membership in my 1 penny club, Steve from St. Helens. Welcome to my 1 penny club, you cheap fucker.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Have you got someone?
I could fill that jug 3 times over.
Go on, do one.
Do you know what I'll do?
You done?
All right, I will. But in the interest of trying to be that happy, that positive outlook.
Yeah.
What I always say is, you take away, the only time you lose is when you don't learn. Mm-hmm. So you always take away something from every bad experience. Yeah. So I've got loads of builders that I could name and loads of clients that I could name. Some absolute shockers. And yeah, do you know what? And there's one I will say, she's she goes by a couple of names, actually. She's got a few fraud action cases out on her. We got stung by her to the tune of about eight grand. But the lesson I learned was how to pursue somebody through the courts and how to get bailiffs and how to, and I learned from her. But yeah, her she goes by Sammy. She's a sorcerer, investor type down around Nottingham area. And I am grateful because she taught me a lot. She made us change our processes in the office, made us be a bit more strict on our own due diligence and everything else. So it was a lesson well learned. But yeah, there's a girl on Facebook's chasing her, and she's posted up. She's got so many cases against her now. She's just screwing everybody left. And apparently,
and what was she doing? Raising some money from people? Or?
Oh, she pulled us in to do. And the thing is, if it had been one job, big job, I would have flagged it in my head and asked for money on account. But it was 4 small jobs. And it just didn't twig with me that 4 small jobs equals 1 big job. And I went down and measured them all up in one day and designed them all up. So it was about 8 grand's worth of fees. If it had been 1 big job where I was going down and things, I would have went, oh yeah, we need some money on account here. But it just didn't twig. And I sent her over the designs, and she was like, oh yeah, these are great. I sent them to my clients. She had sold these deals and all being 6-bed HMOs. None of them were 6-beds, they were all 5s. So I think all our investors pulled out. But I'm guessing they're just jumping ahead. But anyway, yeah, these look great, love them. I'll get you paid. Never. And then it started ignoring me. And, did the whole letter before action, and yeah, took her through the courts, sent bailiffs. Bailiffs showed up at her house just before Christmas. And then, I say, somebody else has come to me because she'd seen me as being one of the people on the list of debtors. And they built this whole case. They're trying to actually go after her for fraud. She's just been doing this for 20 years. And just constantly.
That's fucking crazy.
And
how these people survive for so long.
Yeah. And I thought, and the worst thing is, and this is something I learned, I didn't think, she's an older woman. Looks like a bit like a granny. I didn't think a granny would screw you. It's a good lesson to learn that, isn't it? It's sort of, you think, if she'd been a bloke in his 40s.
From now on, never trust granny.
Never trust a granny. But she needs her, she'll get her comeuppance. She'll answer her. I have a great belief. It's actually a line from a film which I've always liked. It's Heath Ledger film about the jousting. But and it's a mix of a couple of things. But you've been weighed and you've been measured and you've been found lacking. And then there's the other one. I can't remember which faith it is, where when you meet the guide to the other side and your heart's weighed against the weight of a feather. But I've always had a great belief that when you meet your maker, you'll be weighed on your actions in life. And if you're found lacking, well, if you believe in that sort of thing, whatever religion you are, but if you're found lacking in your beliefs, then you know what the answer is. So, but even then, why would you live your life like that? Why would you go around screwing people? These people rely on it to pay their bills. It's
the lowest level you can drop as a human being.
They feed their kids. They keep a house. They keep a roof over their own. It's like, you are the lowest of the low. If you're doing that,
I'm here. I'm like Constantine. I came for their souls. I'm gonna call out all these cheap fuckers.
Yeah, it's just a disgrace. So yeah, she's a real bad one. She's been doing it for 20 years. She's done carpet fitters, curtain fitters. She's done a couple of builders. She did me. I got about half of the money back in the end. Through bailiff, she got into a payment plan. She made a few payments and then she blanked me again. And at that point, we just put a line through it and went, we'll get something out of it.
Write it off.
Yeah, but there's people she owes a lot more than she owed me to that she hasn't given them a penny to. And she's just a bad person. Yeah.
She's in One Penny Club now.
Yeah.
Grant, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think it's been a great chat, and mostly I enjoy listen to you guys and learn the new things because you all got experience. You've been in the business for a while. You've seen ups and downs. You smashed marketing. You watched marketing strategies and applied them, and then built great business on that. So that's the main thing for me from this as well, apart from talking about loyalty and things that I want to talk about and calling all these cheap fuckers is the fact that I bring inspiring people who got something to say, something valuable, and
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you to be here, and thank you for a great chat. It's been pleasure.
Pleasure.
People ain't loyal no more. It's time to talk.